Hello and welcome to video 2. We're going to be working with tool sets today in Adobe Illustrator. Now, Illustrator helps artists create what's called a vector-based image. Unlike pixel images, which contain these small little squares that help make up a picture, like an overall picture, a vector-based image uses a whole lot of math and science to create images that can be blown up into huge scale or shrunk down into small scale. And when you do that process of shrinkage or blowing up, there's no fuzziness, there's no pixelation. It's usually a pretty crystal clear image. So many people use Illustrator to create things like logos, marketing, graphics, signage, art, and illustration. There are so many reasons to use Illustrator. But the bottom line is, use Illustrator when you want to create graphics. So I'm going to show you a few tools that we use to help you do just that. So first I'm going to start a new project, create new, and we get the window that pops up, and everything's pretty much set where I want it, 8.5 by 11 inches. We're going to do portrait, the bleed is 0, just one artboard, good to go. Create. So here we are, we have the background, we have a blank artboard to work on. Anything that shows up on this white area is what is going to be printable. So over here on the left hand side is your toolbar, and the first tool I'm going to show you is the shape tool. It's about 5 down from the top, and if you hover your mouse there's the rectangular tool. Now do you see that little arrow at the kind of bottom right hand corner of that rectangle shape? That indicates that there's a hidden panel. So if you click and hold your mouse, you'll open up that hidden panel to see other tools that are located inside of it. So we could create a rectangle, a rounded rectangle, ellipse, polygon, and a polygon's pretty cool because you do all kinds of shapes, multi-sided shapes, 3-sided shapes, you name it. We have a star tool and also a flare tool, which is kind of cool. I'll show you how that looks like. But we'll start with the rectangle. So once you choose the rectangle, you basically select the command. Your cursor changes to a little crosshair, and that indicates that you're ready to draw. So if you just simply click and drag your mouse out, there you have a rectangle. Very exciting, isn't it? You just drew your first thing in Illustrator. Awesome! Alright, so we have this big beautiful rectangle. I do want to point out that there are a couple things going on with this. Do you see the white squares that populate the corners and the middles of the outline of the rectangle? Those are called grips, and with grips you can modify the shape a little bit more. So here I can kind of drag it out or do what I want to. The diagonals kind of shrink it or enlarge the shape in total. If you hold the shift while clicking on that, it actually keeps the shape in proportion. If you don't hold shift, you can see how I can kind of work it around a little bit. So there's some kind of fun things. Those little blue circles that you see in the corners, those actually allow you to round the corners if you want to. So you can actually bring it as far as it'll let you go, or just barely round the corners, but it's up to you. And then of course that little grip in the middle allows you to move the shape around on the screen without having to use any kind of move tool or anything like that. Alright, that's the rectangle. So what if I wanted to create a rectangle that had color? Well, with the rectangle already highlighted and selected, I go up to my options bar, and at the very left hand side you should see 2 squares. One is white, and then one kind of has like a white square in the middle of a black square. So the color choice on the left is the fill, and that will change the inside of the color. And Illustrator comes with some pre-chosen swatches. That's what they call these little things that you see in here, these colored squares. So you can definitely choose what color that you want your square to be. Ooh, I like that lime green. Look at that. That's very fashion forward. And then I can also choose what color the border is going to be, which is what the square is to the right. So if I click on there, you see the same swatches. Let's go pink for my border. Now you'll notice that the pink kind of shows up, but it's super small. So if I want to see a thicker border, I go to the next item over in the options bar and I click, and you can see like it's got 1 point, 2 point, 3 point. If I do 7 point, you can see how that border got really thick. 80, whoa mama, we got thick borders going on. Kind of play with it a little, and you can definitely choose what kind of colors that you want to use. If you're interested in doing a gradient, over here on the right hand side is the gradient area. If you highlight your square and then click on the gradient, you'll notice that it changes colors. Very cool, white to black. If you want to update the colors, so if you don't want white and black, you actually want colors, right over here, if you double click on that, you can see that there are several colors, the same exact colors that we had before. So here's lime green, and let's do hot pink on the other side. Oh, fabulous. Look at that gradation. Nice. So you can also add more colors to it. So if we click in between those two circles, you can see how you can add colors. So maybe I want a shot of blue in there. Oh, lovely. Or maybe we want some purple, not really sure. You can definitely add colors to it. This is a really great way to make metal by playing with all different shades of gray. Well, actually, let's go over how to do metal. So I'm going to click here, and I'm going to do, let's do a lighter gray. And on this one, I'll do kind of a darker gray, maybe another kind of lighter gray, and another darker gray. So you can kind of see how it comes across as like a shiny aluminum of some kind. So gradations are a load of fun. You can make it a linear gradation or a circular gradation by looking at the type of gradient that you're using. Let's see, what's this one? The nice thing about Illustrator is if you hover your mouse over any of the buttons, it'll tell you what it is. So this one is a, what was it again? Freeform gradient. That one's kind of new to this edition, so that's pretty fun. So it looks like you can actually play with where your gradation's going. Oh, that's awesome. Very cool. Oh yes, and then I betcha we can double click. Yes, we can, and we can change the colors. Oh, lime green. Isn't Illustrator so much fun? There is endless opportunities for you to create in this. And as each edition comes out, they have more and more fun stuff to play with. So gradation on a shape, that's how you do it. I'm not sure what lines mean. Play with that and see what you can come up with and see what kind of other fabulous things that you can do. Now you'll notice over here up in the color picker again, that color has updated, and we can still go back and like put it to a solid color, but then we'd have to come back over here to gradient and click on it, and we'd have to like change it up again. You can also notice that the color picker is down here as well as up in the options bar, so you are free to use either one. They do the exact same thing. If you don't want any color in it so that it's more transparent, you can definitely choose this white with a red stripe. In Photoshop, in Illustrator, InDesign, the white with the red stripe means no fill, no color. It is just kind of an entity that's transparent. I guess that's the best way I can put it. Alright, well, let's see what else we can draw. Let's do a rounded rectangle just so that you can see what that looks like. And there I've got it back to white. Let's do a different color. Let's do red. Beautiful. We've got the ellipse tool. Now on these shapes, if you hold the shift while drawing the shape, it'll give you perfect squares or circles. So if you need a perfect circle, just hold shift with the ellipse button and you can draw a circle. That looks wonderful as well. Let's change colors because I like a variety. Let's do brown. Good old brown. Oh yes, it updated my circle. If you don't want the color to highlight inside of the shape that you just drew, use this black arrow right here and click off so that you deselect that shape. And then you can click on it again, and then you can choose like what color you want. So again, click off, click on, click off, click on. The black arrow is meant to move objects and play with the grips in terms of overall, but the white arrow allows you to be a little bit more manipulative. So when you use the white arrow and you click on a grip, see how I can kind of manipulate the shape into like a little teardrop of some kind? Look at that, that's fabulous. It makes the grips have these little arms, that's what I like to call them, so that you can actually kind of make it more of a fluid, custom type shape. So that's pretty fun. So again, the black arrow manipulates like the movement of the shape and the overall size and width and all that kind of stuff, but the white arrow, it will let you move the shape as well, but it also kind of makes these grips become something that you can play with a little bit more. Look at how much you have learned in like 2 minutes. This is crazy, people. This is crazy. Okay, moving on. Let's look at some other shapes. Polygon tool. Now the polygon is going to default to this shape right here that you see. It's a six-sided shape. If you want a different shape, what you do is you have to have the command started and then just click and let go. Click. And this little box will come up and it'll be like, okay, Jessica, what shape do you want? What radius do you want? How many sides do you want? So if I want a triangle, I just type 3 and I click OK. There's my triangle. Now it will always do an isosceles triangle, which geometry majors means what? 3 equal sides, you guessed correctly. If you want a non-isosceles triangle, you can click, and sometimes what you have to do is you have to click to kind of activate the grip and then drag it out. So if it didn't work the first time, try clicking twice on the grip and then it will be fine. Sometimes you have to tell Illustrator, hey, this is the grip I want to manipulate. Manipulate. So very nice. There we go. There is our, and then of course we can round the edges if we want to. It looks like a nice dome shape on my triangle. Very nice. So what you see, like anything that's in the white is going to print. So these areas that are off are not going to print. So just keep that in mind while you are drawing. All right, shape tools. Let's see, we got the star tool. So that works very much the same way as the polygon tool. If you want a multi-sided star beyond the traditional looking star, you just click and the box appears and you can tell it I want an 8-pointed star. Click, there's my 8-pointed star. So exciting. Oh my gosh, think of everything that you can create now just with shapes. It's insane. All right, and then last but not least, I'm going to show you the flare tool. It's pretty cool. I'm just going to click and drag, and it just looks like this little flare. And I'm going to click off of it so you can see, and it just looks like there's light emanating from my star. I don't really use the flare tool too much, but it is kind of cool if you want to put a really neat effect on something. It's there for you. So that's shapes. Pretty simple, right? It's not too far from like inserting a shape in Word or PowerPoint. It's pretty much the same concept. So I'm going to delete these, and I could click on a shape and delete them using delete on my keyboard. Here goes the flare, bye flare. But I can also click and drag to create a selection box and delete multiple at the same time. So again, click and drag to create a selection box. Anything touching the selection box gets selected, and you can delete using delete on your keyboard. Hello and welcome to the introduction video to Adobe Illustrator for interior designers. My name is JR. I'm going to be your guide through this amazing world that is Adobe Illustrator. Out of all the Adobe products, Illustrator is definitely my favorite, and I hope to show you some tricks that'll make it your favorite too. I also want to remind the viewing audience that this series teaches Illustrator in ways that interior design students may find handy. There are a lot of ways to go about using Illustrator. My methodology is what I'm going to be showing you in this series, so it may or may not be the best methodology for you. I'm a big promoter of finding what works best for you, so if mine doesn't work, there are, I'm sure, a lot of series out there that might work better for you. But I do try to break down Illustrator into easy to follow steps, so even if you're not an interior design student, you should still be able to follow along with ease and grace. Just remember, design software is not always the easiest to learn, so be kind to yourself through the learning process. And know that if you do feel frustrated at any point, then you are human. And everyone who has ever done anything great with design software has felt frustrated at some point. So you're really in good hands if you do. Well, let's get started, shall we? In this video, I'm going to introduce you to the interface of Illustrator, where to find things, how to kind of work your way through all the different areas on the screen. So the first thing that happens is you open Illustrator, and this is probably something that you see on your screen as well. Your first goal is to either create a new project or open a previous project. So over here on the left hand side you see two buttons, create new or open. You can also find this up in the main menu bar, which is what this is at the very top. Under file you should see that there's new and open as well. I'm just going to go ahead and click on the create new button since we haven't really opened or done anything previously in Illustrator. And what happens is this little window pops up. So this is kind of setting up what kind of document that you're going to be working on. So the first thing you want to do is check up at the very top. Are you working on a project for a mobile device? Is it for a website? Are you going to print it? Are you working film or video? Or are you doing art and illustration? Personally, I always choose print. Even if it's for any of the other things, it's just a real basic, easy thing to work with. So the first thing you're going to notice is that it says letter. So these are all the different types of documents that you can work with. It says letter, and it's in a measuring unit called points. Now, I'm an interior designer. I don't understand points. Graphic designers and people who illustrate all the time, they definitely understand that method of measurement. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over to the right side and I'm going to choose inches instead of points. Oh, that's so much better because now it's reading 8.5 by 11. Yes, it still reads points over here, but at least I can control like what kind of document that I'm working on. So 8.5 by 11 is a standard American size piece of paper that we work with, so I'm going to keep that. The next thing that you need to look at is, am I working in portrait or landscape? So you can decide which one that you want to work with. Artboards. So you're going to see when we open this document that there's going to be a background and then a white kind of canvas-like area that's where you're going to actually put the things that you create onto, and that's called an artboard. So for right now I'm just going to do one, but there might come a time when you're doing a booklet or a pamphlet or you're trying to create multiple sheets within the document. That is when you would use more than one artboard. Bleed has to do with the printing boundaries. I almost always leave it in zeros. And I think that's pretty much all we need to worry about. If we go to more settings, there is this thing called color mode, and it's where you can choose whether your document is CMYK or RGB. CMYK is cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Those are the printing colors that like your inkjet or laserjet printers work with. So it's really great if you know that you're going to physically print a document. I would stick with CMYK. if you know that this is going to be a digital presentation project, it's going to be on a website or PowerPoint or something that's actually viewed on screens, then I would choose the RGB color mode. RGB stands for red, green, blue, which are the colors of light that make up your screen. So there's a little bit of trivia for you. I'm going to keep it at CMYK. Raster effects, so this is 300 ppi. I just usually keep it there. It means pixels per inch, and the more you have, the better quality your photos. So 300 is a really great mode. And then preview mode, we can decide if we want. I honestly don't even know what those are, so I always keep it on default. And I'm going to go ahead and click Create Document, and it takes a second. And here it is. So like I said, what happens is you get this gray background, and then it's like a white piece of paper sitting on top of that gray background. So all the dimensions of the paper that we did in that little Create New Document window box is set up, and we now have an 8.5 by 11 size piece of paper. Any kind of art that you do in Illustrator is going to be done on the white paper, at least if you want it printed. Now you can, of course, always work in the gray area, but if you leave anything in the gray area, it will not print on the document. So that kind of helps you understand. I oftentimes work in the gray and then move it over to the white. It's totally up to you how you want to work it. So I already mentioned the menu bar up above, and this is where you go to save documents up in the file portion of the menu bar. You can print documents from here. In Illustrator, if you want to make a JPEG, a PNG, or a TIFF, you actually have to export it out of Illustrator. In Photoshop, you actually save as, and you can turn it into a JPEG that way. So there's a little bit of a difference between Illustrator and Photoshop in that sense. So just remember, if you want to create a picture file, you always export it, and you always export as. Edit is where you go to copy and paste. You can kind of work with a few different things in Edit. Object is where you can decide like how to transform it, if you need to scale it, rotate it, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of different commands throughout this whole menu bar. I'm not going to go through all of them. Effect is really fun because you can work with Photoshop effects. You can also stylize, rasterize. Oh my gosh, this is so much terminology that you don't know yet. It's okay, we're going to get you through it. And then of course window. So this is a really great thing to show you if you need to turn on an extra panel that hosts a whole lot of tools, different types of tools that you want to work with. This is what you do. So for instance, if I wanted to open the brush panel, you can see that it opened up a little window. Essentially is what a panel is, but it hosts a whole lot of different tools that you can use to create the lines and shapes that you want to create. I'm just going to simply click close just to close that panel, and I can always reopen it by going back to the window. Right underneath the main menu bar is the what I call the options bar. So anytime that you're working with a command, this option bar can change to give you different parameters that you can work with. So for instance, if I were going to choose type tool over here, you'll see that this kind of updates with all the different things that I can do when I go to add text to a document. So font, and is it going to be bold or regular? Is it going to be 12 point in size? Is it going to be 52 points in size? Is it left justified, center justified? All that kind of thing. And then if I choose a shape, you'll see how that also changes. So the options bar usually changes only when you have a command active or a tool active that allows you to change parameters of what's happening. So I already kind of pointed this out. This is your main toolbar, and this is where you're going to go to do most of your work in Illustrator. So things like clicking on objects, selecting objects, the type tool, the shape tool, all of these things, how to change the color and the border color are really great These are really important tools for you to know, and it's always good to have this toolbar out and in the open. I always keep it right where Illustrator defaults it to, and that is your main toolbar. Over on the right hand side, you're going to see that there are already some pre-chosen panels for you. The one I want to pay most attention to is the layers panel. Layers is a whole other video. It's a very dynamic way of organizing your drawings. It's a little different than anything that you've ever seen before, but once you understand it, it makes a lot of sense and it makes working with Illustrator a lot easier. So in a nutshell, this is Adobe Illustrator. The interface, I kind of showed you where to find a few things. In the next video series, I am going to show you how to work with some of the tools that you saw on the left-hand side of your screen.